So today we're going to do chapter 17. We'll do a quick review of chapter 16. So chapter 16 was titled Daiva Ashura Sampada Vibhaga Yoga. That in this material cosmos that there are two types of personalities among the Nitya Bhaddhas, both those who have divine qualities and those who have demoniac qualities. So those who have divine qualities are covered in the first 3 verses, and then the rest of the chapter is focused on people with demoniac qualities and looks at them from different lenses, right? What do they do? How do they think? How do they act? Etc. What are their characteristics, their qualities, their beliefs, their attitudes? And Krishna also talks about the destination for those who have divine qualities and the destination for those who have demoniac qualities. And he also talks about how they actually develop. So essentially, from shloka 1 to 9, we have a description of the divine and demoniac qualities. And then from shlokas 10 to 18, we have activities of the demoniac person. And then shlokas 19 to 22, we have 2 things. One is the consequences of demoniac activities as well as the causes of demoniac activities. And then the last 2 shlokas, 23 and 24, the Lord talks about the choice that we have between the divine and demoniac. We can either choose to be associated with the divine or choose to associate with the demoniac. Now, what is the reason that Krishna does not talk about divine qualities in this particular chapter? That's because he has already mentioned this throughout the Bhagavad Gita. So, for example, if we look at, let's see, chapter 2, shlokas 54 to 72, Krishna talks about the characteristics of a person who is sthita prajna. When Krishna tells Arjuna, but those who are in this transcendental mood, they can overcome anything and everything. So then Arjuna asks, what does this person look like? How do they talk? How do they walk, etc. So for the first time, Krishna talks about people with divine qualities when he talks about the sthita prajna. Then in chapter 3, he talks about leaders, Mahajans like Janak Maharaj, and then himself, and then other kings, great kings. In chapter 4, he talks about the Nishkama Karma Yogi and their qualities. Then if we come to chapter 6, he talks about the yogis. And if we come to chapter 10, shloka 4 and 5, in chapter 10, Krishna talks about those with godly qualities. And in chapter 12, shlokas 13 to 18, he talks about the devotees' qualities. And in chapter 13, we talked about the 20 items of knowledge. And in chapter 14, shlokas 20 to 25, Krishna talks about the qualities of the person who transcends the 3 modes of nature. And then in this chapter, shlokas 1 to 3, divine qualities. So throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has been speaking about people with divine qualities. And therefore, in this chapter, he focuses on demoniac. we talked about three ways in which we acquire our qualities: nature, nurture, and culture. Nature meaning uh, what you're born with. And then we said, even as the child is in the womb, the consciousness can be influenced through the performance of samskaras. And throughout life, samskaras play an important role in the consciousness of an individual. So that is nature. Nurture means what is it that we cultivate? Which type of quality are we feeding? Are we strengthening? And then we also talked about culture. Culture is, who do we spend more time with? Do we spend more time with those who have divine qualities, or do we spend more time with people with demoniac qualities? And then we also said, but then we also possess both qualities in us. And that's just natural because this is Kali Yuga. So in Kali Yuga, a human being will possess both divine and demoniac qualities. So then the nurture piece of it becomes important. But then if you're nurturing the demoniac qualities, then of course culturally you are going to gravitate towards other people with the same qualities. So the two are interrelated, the nurture and the culture. And so these three things, nature, nurture, and culture, shapes one's personality, belief systems, attitude, etc. So when Mother Sita was in the Dandakaranya forest along with Lord Ram, she asks him a question. She said, "You have given up your kingdom, but why are you still holding on to the bow and arrow? You've not used it yet," or something to that effect, she says. And Lord Ram says, "I'm a Kshatriya, so it's my nature and my duty to protect. So it's both my nature and my duty. So therefore, I will always be carrying the bow and arrow. And I'm a Kshatriya, and therefore that's my duty. Even if I'm in the forest and even if I don't have the kingdom, it doesn't matter." So at that time, Sita Devi talks about a Brahmana who was so pious and had accumulated so much pious credits that in his next life he would have taken on the post of Indra. And the current Indra was feeling threatened that, this Brahmana is so nice, he is performing so much austerities, he's going to take my role next. So who wants to give up a nice role? Nobody wants to give up a nice role. So Indra did not want to give up his post, or whoever the person was who was occupying that post of Indra. So Sita Devi tells Lord Ram, so this is what Indra plotted. So Indra decides, this Brahmana is a threat to me. I better take action and do something about it, because otherwise I will lose my job. So even among devatas, there can be instances of insecurity, especially when your position is threatened. So this happened with Indra. So it is said in our culture, in those days, if people had wealth, they didn't have a banking system. So where are they going to take their wealth? If they're traveling and if they wanted to be kept safe, what would they do? In those days, they would find a Brahmana and give their wealth, or what can you call it? their possessions that were very dear to them to be in the safekeeping of a Brahmana. That's what they would do. Because they know that the Brahmana would not lie, and when they come back to collect it, the Brahmana would always give it back, because that's just the nature of a Brahmana. A Brahmana is always honest and simple and not chasing material things. So this is what Indra does. So Indra comes in the guise, he doesn't come as Indra. He comes to this Brahmana and gives him a sword, a very beautiful sword, and tells him, can you please take care of this? I will come back and collect it shortly. And the Brahmana says, yes, sure, why not? That's all Indra did. He comes and gives him a sword that he should take care of. But the sword was a beautiful sword. So the Brahmana agrees. So the first day, the Brahmana is not interested in the sword. The second day, he looks at it and he says, oh, that's quite beautiful. So he just looks at it from different angles and admiring the sword. The second day, he thought, oh, why don't I pick it up and try it out? See how it feels. So second day, he picks up the sword just to see, how it feels. Third day, he starts practicing moves, like as if he were a Kshatriya. So what happened? His pious cred started reducing. Just through the act of being attracted to the sword, he lost some of his Brahmanical qualities. So, you think Indra was successful? Was Indra successful or not on his mission?
Yeah.
He was successful, right? Yeah, because the Brahmana forgot that he was a Brahmana and got attracted to something that had nothing to do with his Varna or Ashrama. So the minute some of his pious credits got reduced, he was no longer a threat to Indra. It was as simple as that. So after the war, after Lord Ram kills Ravana, he sends Hanuman to bring Sita. And when Hanuman goes to the Ashoka Vatika, he looks at all of the Rakshashis surrounding Sita Devi. And he tells Sita Devi, with your permission, I would like to thrash them. Because they've been torturing you. Remember, Ravana gives Sita Devi 12 months. You better say yes to me, become my wife. If you don't agree, you will be chopped up and I'll have you for breakfast. That's what Ravana had told Sita. And Ravana had also instructed all these Rakshashis that until then they should torture Sita because she was not pliable, she was not consenting. So Hanuman asks Sita Devi, with your permission, I will take care of them because they've been torturing you for the last 1 year. So Sita Devi tells Hanuman, one cannot change one's code of conduct just because others misbehave towards you. That one should, especially if you have good qualities, obviously you don't want to give it up, right? So in this regard, she tells him a story. So she tells him, one day a hunter goes to hunt for a tiger. He has his weapons with him. But somehow or the other, the tiger senses the hunter's presence and begins to chase him. And in that process, the hunter loses his weapons and now he's at the risk of losing his life. And he has only one option. There is a tree in front of him. He has to climb the tree. So as he climbs the tree, he realizes there is a bear parked on one of the branches. Bear is also a carnivore. So the tiger was circling the tree. There is a bear sitting on the tree. There is a man sitting on the tree. The hunter is sitting on the tree. So the tiger tells the bear, you know, this hunter is an intruder. You and I belong to the jungle. Why don't you push him down? Because I'm hungry. I need to eat something. We'll share the spoils. I'll eat some, you eat some. So this was the tiger's proposition to the bear. Push that man down because I'm hungry. So the bear said, you know, the minute the hunter climbed the tree, he has taken my protection. He's taken my shelter. So I cannot do that. So the tiger gets dejected. So tiger is still circling the tree. Bear is there. Man is there, sitting on different branches. The bear eventually falls asleep. So the tiger now speaks to the hunter. And the tiger tells the hunter, look, I'm hungry. Obviously, you don't want to sacrifice yourself. The bear has fallen asleep. Why don't you push him down so that I can have my meal and I'll go away? You'll be saved. So what do you think the hunter did? Did he push the bear down? Of course he did. He had to save his life. What choice did he have? So he pushes the bear down as it is asleep. What happens is the bear lands on one of the lower branches and comes awake. And the tiger is thinking, oh, what luck. I'm trying both parties and it's not working out. So the tiger speaks to the bear and tells the bear, see what I told you? We cannot trust an intruder. He was only too happy to push you down so that I could have you for my meal. You should have listened to me the first time when I told you to push him down so I can have him as my meal. To which the bear responds, you know, just because the hunter revealed his nature, his true nature, that does not mean I need to change my nature of giving shelter when somebody has taken my shelter. So this is the power of having divine or demoniac qualities. It doesn't change that easily. Or it could be changed with the right level of temptation, as we saw with the Brahmana and Indra. So how these qualities develop? Nature, nurture, and culture. That's what we were discussing. And then Krishna talks about how, by practicing devotional service, you can come to the divine platform. So I want to cover a few more points, an interesting point in chapter 16, and then we'll move to chapter 17. There is a difference between beliefs and actions. One may believe a certain thing, but one may actually act quite differently. So our actions are not necessarily always aligned to our belief system. If we are really honest with ourselves and we observe ourselves, whatever beliefs that we hold, sometimes those beliefs are imposed on others, but not on ourselves. We act differently from our beliefs. That's just the nature of a human being. So Krishna is emphasizing in this chapter, he's focused on your actions, not necessarily your beliefs. You can believe whatever you want. Ultimately, the way you behave and the things that you practice is what he is looking at. The other thing here is Krishna is also saying that hell is not an eternal place. Even from hell, one can redeem themselves by climbing up, right? If you look at the analogy of the upside down banyan tree, you just have to change your direction. You have to change your orientation. So even from the hellish planets, you can elevate yourself. You can reform your mentality, your attitude, your actions, etc. So hell is not this like the Christians believe or the Islam religion believes, that it is an eternal place of damnation, because that's what their culture, their religion teaches, that once you go to hell, you can never come out. Yeah, it may be difficult. If you're constantly in the tamogun, it may be difficult to get out of tamogun. But hell is not eternal. In Vedic culture, hell is not eternal. It's not that once you go to hell, you can never get out. It's just, it is a very tough classroom. So Krishna also talks about in this chapter of the three gates of hell: lust, anger, and greed. When lust is not satisfied, it leads to anger. When lust is satisfied, then you have more desires. That means then lust leads to greed. So lust, if it is frustrated, it leads to anger. If it is satisfied, it leads to greed. So Krishna says these are the three gates of hell that you should be worried about. All of us should be worried about. So Krishna is also saying, because this entire section is about the Jnana Yoga, and the previous chapter, the chapter 15, specifically talked about the Vedas in the context of the banyan tree. So Krishna is also saying Shastras provide us a pathway to elevation. And Shastras are not rigid. It is not do this or you're gone to hell. But interestingly, Shastras vary depending on which guna you're predominantly under. So some of you may know this, some of you may not know this, but the entire Vedas are split into three. There is a section of the Vedas that are specifically for those who are under Tamogun and what they can do to elevate their consciousness. There is a section of the Vedas that's for people under Rajagun. What activities can they perform and what activities that they can follow to elevate themselves to the Sattva-gun. So similarly, there is a section of the Vedas specifically for those in the Sattva-gun. So the Vedas itself are divided according to the gunas, which means our Shastras are not uniform in that regard. They are omniform. What does this mean? And I'm using the terminology used by His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu when I listened to his lecture on this particular chapter. What does it mean that Shastra is not uniform, it is omniform? It's that the rules are different for those in Tamogun, the rules are different for those in Rajagun, and the rules are different for those in Sattvagun. Now you may say, hey, that's not fair. Yes, externally it may not look fair. But what are you going to do? If somebody is so foolish, you can't enforce on them stricter rules, right? So if somebody is so foolish and completely gone off the rockers, can you impose a lot of rules and regulations on them? You cannot. You have to work with what you have, right? It's a process. So let's say, for example, our Shastras say those who eat meat are under the influence of tamogun. So Shastras say, okay, fine. If you're attracted to eating meat, fine, eat meat. But the Shastras also say it's okay to eat meat. But if you do want to eat meat, you please follow the process listed in the Vedas, which is it should be had once a month only, not on a daily basis. The head of the family should take the animal up to the outskirts of the city and kill it himself. Come back and offer it to Kali Devi. And like this, the family can have meat. And you are not allowed to touch the cow. You can have the lower animals like sheep or goat or whatever. So the Shastras are accommodating for people with varying levels of maturity in relation to their gunas. So the Shastras are saying, we recognize that not everybody is going to be in Sattvagun and not everybody is going to be able to follow Sattvagun. But at a minimum, if you're in Tamogun, this is the minimum you should do if you want to consume meat. So, which means the Shastras are saying, irregardless of which guna you are under, you have to regulate your activities. You can't just do what you want. That is, if you want to follow the path of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, you have to follow a designated path. You cannot operate outside the boundaries of the Vedas. If you do, then what is the chance of you being able to elevate yourself, elevate your consciousness? So, similarly, the Shastras have much stricter rules for those who are in Sattva. So the expectations are higher as your consciousness is getting elevated. The expectations are lower when people are in lower segments of consciousness. Therefore, to be under Sattvagun means you have to follow the Vedas far more strictly than those under Rajogun and Tamogun. So essentially, the ungodly can follow lesser rules. But once you come to the godly stage of Sattvagun, the expectations have increased in the Shastras. So essentially, Krishna is saying, doesn't matter even if you're a demon, as long as you're following the Vedic scriptures, or rather, even if you have demoniac tendencies, as long as you're following the Vedic scriptures, you are redeemable. So, which means our scripture has a path for everyone. So, you could say that all of us are infected. The people in the mode of goodness have a mild infection. The people in the mode of passion have a severe infection, and the people in the mode of ignorance have a lethal infection. Now, you would think if you have a lethal infection, the treatment is far more rigorous and severe. That may be true of a physical lethal infection. It may require more significant intervention. But in our Shastras, there is accommodation for people with lethal infection. to give them an opportunity to slowly rise up the levels of consciousness. And Prabhupada has always said that temples are like hospitals. Actually, the only reason temples were constructed is the temple itself in Hindi is called mandir, right? It's a place where you can cure the ills of the mind. When we have a physical ailment, we go to the doctor. Immediately, if we feel discomfort, we go to the doctor. But what about mental ailments? In most societies, acknowledging that one is mentally ill creates so many stigmas. So mandir is a place where you can go tap into higher energy levels, because again mandir was established in areas where the energy levels or the magnetic field was much higher, the intensity of the energy was much higher, so that even people who are mentally ill or otherwise, even if they just step into the temple, they will get benefited because of the differing energy levels there. So Prabhupada has always said that the ISKCON temples are like hospitals. We're all infected and we keep going there for treatment. Some of us are more severely infected than others. But there is nobody who's cured, because if you're cured, you don't have to go to the temple. So, there is one particular shloka I want to cover. So let's do that and then we'll go to chapter 17. Very interesting shloka. And yes, it's 13 to 15. This is Krishna speaking. The demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. He is my enemy, and I have him killed. And I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. So Krishna is talking about what is the mentality of the demons. This is how they think. Hyper aggressive, mean mind, it doesn't matter. I will use whatever means to come out on the top. Because I have to succeed, I don't care about others. If I have to trample on others in the way, who are in my way, I'll do that. I will not hesitate. This is the mode of people in of demoniac nature. How do we understand this? We said dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. These are the 4 topics of the Vedic scriptures. You begin by understanding dharma. After you have understood the Vedic scriptures, you can then make a decision on whether you want to earn a living, or you want to be a brahmachari, or you want to take sannyas. So if you want to be a grihastha, then automatically artha will apply to you. And when you earn a living, you have an opportunity to satisfy your desires. But if you get too caught up in satisfying only material desires, then it leads you to this trap where you never feel happy, you feel frustrated, and then hopefully one day you'll ask why, and then you'll come to the moksha part of the Vedas. So the Vedas are organized very nicely: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. And we said in the earlier class, for a grihastha who's engaged in artha activities, they have to use their earnings to support dharma. So dharma and artha are always conjoined. You cannot separate the two. So in this particular shloka, the way we understand the shloka is, when artha is divorced from dharma, it leads to anartha. Artha means wealth or economics. Dharma means the right thing to do in society, the upholding of values, etc. All Krishna is saying here is, in the pursuit of money, if you disregard dharma, it's going to lead to anartha. So translation of anartha could be, because of your greed, you are going to pull yourself down and you are going to destroy the rest of society also. So which means ultimately, what's the word I'm searching for? Destruction of the larger wealth of society. So artha divorced from dharma leads to greed. And that greed leads to self-destruction and destruction of others around us. So you could say dharma is code of conduct or ethics. So when one pursues wealth devoid of ethics, it leads to greed, and greed leads to self-destruction and destruction of society. So dharma should never be divorced from artha. So when we pursue a living, we need to make sure we're doing it in a dharmic way. We are not divorced from dharma. You know, this would be especially true, especially for those who are running their own businesses, because the opportunity to deviate from dharma is much higher there. Simply because you have to deal with so many different aspects of society to get your business moving, you know, because of the corruption that is rife across the place. So ambition divorced from ethics leads to greed, self-destruction, and destruction of society. So with that, we'll come to chapter 17. So chapter 17 is titled Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga. Coming back to the summary, the single word summary for chapter 16 was inmates. We have to be careful who we associate with, divine or demoniac. So today, Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga, the divisions of faith. And the single word summary is key. The key is faith. And this is represented in the Vedic scriptures as Om Tat Sat. That's the key. So let us say you've taken the advice of your attorney. You've understood this is the prison that you're occupying. How you should actually escape this prison, you've understood. You need to follow the Vedic scriptures. You are careful about who you associate with. You've taken care of all of these instructions of Krishna. And in the 17th chapter, let's say you've come to the door of the prison. Somebody still needs to unlock the door. What is the key to unlock the door? Because this entire section, Krishna is saying you need to follow the Vedic scriptures. To follow the Vedic scriptures, you should do so with faith. If you do it without faith, Krishna says it's an utter failure. So the key to unlocking the door to prison so you can step out of this prison is that one must have faith in the scriptures. One cannot doubt the scriptures. That faith is represented by Om Tat Sat. We will discuss at the end of today's session what this Om Tat Sat really means. So today is the penultimate chapter, chapter 17. Before we begin, let's offer our obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So this chapter begins with an interesting question from Arjuna. And in response to Arjuna's question, Krishna is going to talk about the three gunas again. So Arjuna has an interesting question. So let's look at the question. O Krishna, what is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of scriptures, but worship according to their own imagination? Are they in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance? So far, Krishna has talked about the importance of the scriptures. So Arjuna is asking an interesting question. What about those who don't follow the scriptures, but they still practice things maybe based on family tradition, or they've concocted something on their own, they're following it? What about them? Are they divine or are they demoniac? Where do they fall? So Krishna has said, if you don't follow the Vedic scriptures, you're a demon. If you follow the Vedic scriptures, you're divine. What about those people hanging in between? So it's an interesting question from Arjuna. They may not be following the scriptures, but they seem to have faith in something else. So in response to this particular question, Krishna will say, then such people have to be evaluated through the lens of the three gunas. So Krishna says, according to the modes of nature acquired by the embodied soul, one's faith can be of three kinds: in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance. So from here on out, Krishna is going to say, for those who don't have faith in the Vedic scriptures, but they have faith in something else. Just 1 second now. Just give me a minute. Hare Krishna, my apologies. So where were we? What were we talking about? Yes, so Krishna is going to use the lens of goodness, passion, and ignorance to talk about how these people who are neither following the Vedic scriptures nor completely demoniac, nor have they rejected it. They are doing something, they're trying something. Maybe it's family tradition, maybe it's their own beliefs, or maybe something that they've heard they're trying to practice. So Krishna is going to look at these kind of people through the lens of the three gunas, and then he is going to look at how they pray, what kind of foods they eat, what are the austerities that they perform, what's the charity that they give, how do they give in charity, or how do they approach charity, what are the sacrifices that they perform, and then typically what are their activities. So essentially this entire chapter is going to come back to the topic of gunas, and with the lens of the gunas looking at various facets of these segment of people. So we'll go through the slides quickly and then we'll come back to the shlokas this evening. So this is the acronym for today is FACE. There's a little bit more than what is showing up on this particular slide. There's a lot more detail beyond that. So please recite after me. Arjuna Uvacha.
Arjuna Uvacha.
Ye Shastra Vidhim Mustrijya.
Shastra-vidhim utsrijya
Yajante Shraddhayanvitaah.
yajante shraddha-bhaktaah
Tesham Nishtha ka Krishna.
tesham nishtha-tu ka Krishna
Sattvam Aho Rajastamaha.
sattvam rajastamaha.
So we read the translation of the shloka where Krishna has Arjuna has a question, and then Krishna immediately responds saying, if one does not follow the Vedas, one will follow your natural instincts, whatever you're born with, you're nurtured, or through the aspect of culture. That they will do things based on how they are influenced by the gunas. So who are these three brothers, and who's influenced by what guna, you think?
Ravana, Kumbhakarna, Vibhishan.
And who is under what guna?
Vibhishan is under a mode of goodness, and Ravana is in the mode of Tamoguna. That is a passion. And Kumbhakarna is also.
Ravana is actually under
Ravana is Rajasic. Yes.
Rajoguna.
Because why he wants something more, right? More power, more.
Passion.
Who's that? Kumbhakarna, sleeping. There's an interesting pastime, right? Saraswati Devi trips his tongue up. So instead of saying, I want the post of Indra, he says, I want Nidra. And he ends up sleeping for, 6 months or something. He wakes up for one day and then goes back to sleep again. So Krishna is now going to talk about the lifestyles of these individuals under the different modes. Krishna will come in the very end of the chapter and talk about the Shuddha Sattva state again and the importance of that. So how do these people actually worship? Who do they worship? What kind of foods do they eat? Yajna, Dana, and Tapa are three areas that are important for all of us to perform. Every single human being is supposed to perform these three. What is that? Yajna, Dana, Tapa. So some sacrifice, some charity, some austerity we have to observe. All of us, no exceptions. Krishna also talks about their conduct, their speech, and whether they are able to control their mind or not. Yajante satvika devan.
Yajante
यजन्ते
सात्विका
सात्विका
देवान्
देवान्
Yaksharaksham sirajasaha.
यक्षराक्षांसि
राजसाः
राजसाः
Pretan bhuta ganamschanye.
Preta
प्रेतान् भूता गणांश्चान्ये
Yajante tamasa janaha.
यजन्ते तामसा जनाः.
So Krishna is saying, men in the mode of goodness worship the demigods. So Krishna says, worshipping the demigods is not the right thing to do. But better than not worshipping anything at all, it is better that you worship the demigods. And then he says, those who are worshipping the demigods are actually worshipping me indirectly. So better you worship Krishna directly. But here Krishna is saying, men in the mode of goodness worship the demigods. Those in the mode of passion worship the demons. And those in the mode of ignorance worship ghosts and spirits. What about food? Food in the three modes. Krishna says, those who are in the mode of goodness, he's spoken about this a little earlier, but he's going to add a little bit more detail. So those who are under the mode of goodness, what kind of foods do they eat? Wholesome, juicy, pleasing foods that result in long life. Food should be purification for you. It gives you strength. It helps you lead a happy and disease-free life. Those are generally what people in the mode of goodness observe. What about those in the mode of passion? They tend to be attracted to combination of bitter, sour foods, hot or pungent foods, burning foods. And Krishna says, when you eat these types of food, what happens? It will result in distress, misery, and disease. So actually for you and I also, this is a good instruction. We are supposed to eat sattvic food only. Nothing too spicy, nothing too sour, nothing too bitter. Yes, you can incorporate all of this, but it should not be predominantly one kind of taste. Because if you are attracted to these kind of foods, Krishna himself is saying it's going to lead to disease. It's going to cause distress and misery. So food should be bland as much as possible. And we said foods ideally for human beings should be raw foods mostly. Foods with the high water content is good for you. Foods that are alive or have prana is good for you. And then Krishna says those who are in the mode of ignorance, they will be attracted to food that is tasteless, that is decomposed, untouchable things. So spoiled food, they may not be able to recognize that it is spoiled, they'll just eat it. Days old food, and actually in this chapter Krishna will say that foods should be live, should be cooked. If you are cooking it, it should be consumed within 3 hours of cooking, because it starts putrefying right away, which means that food is no longer under the mode of goodness. It immediately goes to tamasic. Did you know that? Actually, I was hearing Sadhguru's videos sometime back. He also says the same thing, that cooked foods decay much faster. And he gave a wonderful example. He said, you keep a raw fruit or vegetable on your counter in a cup, and then you keep cooked fruit or vegetable in a cup on a counter. Which will go bad first?
Cooked food.
Cooked food, right? Yes, that is why cooked food is not that good for human beings. As much as possible, raw, fresh vegetables and fruits. So cooked foods decompose faster. So if you've cooked the food and you've left it outside, or like we normally do, we'll cook at 6. I also do this. Cook at 6 a.m. in the morning, and then you packed it in a dabba and you take it to office and you're opening it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Some amount of decomposition has already happened, although you may not be able to taste it. Of course, one cannot help it in today's life. What can we do? This is the kind of life that we lead. By the way, this does not apply to prasadam. So foods in the tamogun stage leads to, again, infections, disease, and Krishna says early death. Early death. It shortens your lifespan. So tasteless, decomposed includes your meat and eggs fall under this particular category. So what is the best food? Shuddha sattvas. Any food that is offered to the Lord is considered Shuddha sattva. Now, does that mean in ISKCON we don't use spices, we don't use oil, and we only offer the Lord salads and cut fruits? No. He's the Lord. We offer him sumptuous bhoga. Why? Because the scriptures say Radha Rani is always preparing a new dish for Krishna every day. She never repeats a dish twice. That is Radha Rani's specialty. She's always experimenting. What new thing I can make for Krishna today? So this principle of foods in the mode of goodness, ignorance, passion and ignorance does not apply to prasadam. Okay, so prasadam, you can make sumptuous prasadam and consume it. Yes, but make sure you offer it as bhoga to the Lord first. So sacrifices in the 3 modes. So now we are coming to yajna, dana and tapa. These 3 things every human being must perform. Must perform because we owe it. So now Krishna is going to talk about sacrifices in the 3 modes. So let me move my boxes around. Viddihinam ashrishtanam.
Viddihinam astrastanam
Mantrahinam adakshinam.
mantrahinam adakshinam
Shraddha virahitam yajnam.
Shraddha virahitam yajnam
Tamasam parichakshate.
tamasam parichakshate.
What is Krishna saying? Any sacrifice performed without regard for the directions of the scripture, without distribution of prasadam, without chanting of Vedic hymns and remunerations to the priests, and without faith is considered to be in the mode of ignorance. So there are some people in society who put on a big show, I'm going to perform this great yajna. But if it is done without strict adherence to the scriptures, if it is done without offering bhoga to the Lord and then distributing it as prasadam, without chanting the Vedic hymns by qualified brahmanas, and without involving priests who perform the sacrifice and paying those priests. And then Krishna says, if you do it for show and without any faith, then such kind of sacrifices are done in the mode of ignorance. So if one doesn't pay a priest, but you have used a priest to come and perform the sacrifice, of course, none of us would do that in our culture. But anyway, let's just assume if it happens. And let's say you followed the scriptures, you've offered bhoga to the Lord, you've distributed prasadam, you've hired a priest, all the Vedic hymns have been nicely chanted, but you don't pay the priest, who gets the benefit of that yajna? The priests get the benefit of that yajna when you don't pay for it. Sacrifices in the three modes. So if you are doing yajna in the mode of goodness, there are other shlokas. We've just summarized the bullet points here. So Krishna says those who perform sacrifices in the mode of goodness, they will strictly follow the scriptures. They will do it as a matter of duty, and they will do it without seeking a reward. Which means when you do yajnas, a person in the mode of goodness is not doing it because I want something in return from the Lord. I want something from this demigod, right? This is actually performing sacrifice in the mode of goodness. Without expecting a reward, you're doing it as a matter of duty. So for example, we said, when you build a new house, the Shastras say you have to perform Griha Pravesh. While performing Griha Pravesh, the process, you are actually inviting Lord Vishnu to come and become the master of the house and reside in the house first before you move in. That is the significance of performing Griha Pravesh, is that you are telling Vishnu, you are the master of the house. This house belongs to you. You occupy it first, we will follow. Therefore, when we follow, we become your servants. So when you do Griha Pravesh, you're not doing it for any reward. You are simply inviting the Lord to come and occupy your house first. So you will do it as a matter of duty. What about sacrifice in the mode of passion? People who perform sacrifice in the mode of passion are seeking a material outcome. And or they may be doing it out of a sense of pride. I want to be recognized. My name should be on the plaque in the temple saying, I have contributed so much, I did this yajna, what like that. You're looking for recognition. And then of course, we just read the shloka about performing yajna in the mode of ignorance. Without faith, without paying the priests, doing whatever you want, not following the scriptures, no chanting of the hymns and no distribution of prasad. Okay, so now what about conduct in the three modes? So Krishna says, in the mode of goodness, people will worship as a matter of duty, as a matter of respect. In the mode of passion, we offer and expect respect out of selfish motives, and it's out of a desire for self-glorification. In the mode of ignorance, we believe in torturing ourselves just so that we can get power to destroy others or whatever, to displace others, let's say. So Srila Prabhupada said in one of his classes, there are politicians who go on hunger strike. And if you go by Shastra alone, this kind of going on a hunger strike that has nothing to do with the Shastra is in the mode of ignorance. Because the Shastras expect you to perform austerities as per the Vedic scriptures, not that you perform austerities whenever you want because you want something out of it. So both Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu did this. They tortured themselves and they forced Lord Brahma to give them certain benedictions. And that benediction was to destroy others, and take over Vishnu's position. So unnecessarily torturing your body is not authorized in the Vedic scriptures. If you have to observe fasting, this, that, and the other, you should do it as per the scripture. You shouldn't concoct something on your own and think you're going to please the demigod or going to please the Lord. So the Lord is saying self-torture to get power or whatever is performing austerities in that is in the mode of ignorance. What about speech? Interesting topic. Satyam, Priyam, and Hitam. Krishna uses these three words to describe speech in the mode of goodness. That those who are in the mode of goodness will speak the truth. But how will they speak this truth? They will speak this truth in such a way that it is pleasing to others. It does not create a disturbance in others, even when you're speaking truth. Third, you only speak, and what you speak should be beneficial to the other person and to everybody in general. So if your speech is not Satyam, Priyam, Hitam, then you should not speak. What about speech in the mode of passion? Krishna is saying those who speak in the mode of passion, they do it because they want a particular outcome, and therefore they will use speech in such a way to be manipulative. Or they may use speech to engage in prajalpa or gossip. We said that Duryodhan is an expert in Rajaniti, in diplomacy. So he knows how to say, what to say to rile up people or to calm people or to pacify people. This is speech in the mode of passion. What about speech in the mode of ignorance? Krishna is saying speech in the mode of ignorance is essentially lying, speech that agitates self and others, and speech itself that causes harm or inflicts pain and harm on others. So Socrates was one day sitting. Socrates is a great philosopher, Greek philosopher. And there is a man that comes running to him and he says, I have something very important to tell you. And Socrates asks him, is what you're about to tell me the truth? And the man says, he thinks about it for a little while and he says, I'm not sure. I'm not sure of the information that I have that I want to convey to you. I am not sure if that is the truth. Then Socrates asks him the next question. Is whatever you are about to tell me, am I going to be happy hearing it? And the man says, actually, no, you may not be happy hearing it. And then Socrates asks, is it going to be beneficial for the community and society in general? And the man says, I'm not sure. So Socrates says, okay, thank you. I don't want to hear what you want to say. Please go share that. Whatever you are urgently trying to share with me, you please go to somebody else and share it with them if they are ready to hear you. I don't want to hear this kind of speech. So similarly, there was a man who accused another man of something that he had not done. And later on, he realizes the mistake that he had made and the harm that he had caused. And he wants to make amends for it, but he does not know how to make amends for the mistake that he had created, which is speaking untruth, but maybe not with a devious intent. But still, Chinese whispers. No validation, no verification. We just share information simply because we heard it from somebody else. So he goes to a saint and he tells him, look, I have made this mistake. Can you help me? Because I don't know how to rectify this and how to make amends to the person that I caused injury to. Is there anything special that I can do to get rid of this harm that I've caused? So this holy man gives him a pillow and gives him the following instruction. He tells him, do one thing, go to the middle of the city, cut open the pillow, and toss out all the feathers that is there in the pillow. So that was the instruction the holy man has given him. He gives him a pillow, tells him, take it to the center of the city, cut it open, and let the feathers out. Come back and tell me how it went. So the man follows the instructions of the holy man, and he comes back and he tells him, look, I followed your instruction to the T. I took the pillow to the center of the city, I cut it open, and I let the feathers loose. So the holy man told him, now do one thing. You go back to the city, collect all the feathers, put it back in the pillow, and come and give it to me. And the man immediately said, are you mad or what? The feathers have already flown all over. How will I go and locate them? So the holy man said, do you understand what you've done then? The words have already come out of your mouth. There's nothing you can do to take it back. Of course, as if we follow scriptures, the scriptures tell us how we should actually rectify the situation. You should go to the person that you harmed and beg forgiveness. That's the only way such a situation can be rectified. So speech is actually that important. So especially if you're a devotee of the Lord, you should really mind what you say and of course what you do. So our speech should be truthful, pleasing, and beneficial. If it cannot meet these three criteria, better not to open the mouth also. So we should not engage in gossip. This devotee did that, or whoever, that person did that, this husband and wife, they are fighting, that child is like this, and this person is too problematic, that person is arrogant, they didn't treat me nicely. This is all unnecessary speech. You may be upset and you want to get things off your chest, but in the process, you are actually engaging in passionate behavior and maybe behavior in the mode of tamogun. So we have to be very careful of our speech. Is very, very important instruction for us as devotees. What about the mind under the influence of these three gunas? Well, the mind under the mode of goodness is always self-content, it is satisfied, it's not agitated. And Krishna says, but the mind under the influence of passion is always dissatisfied, is always anxious, right? That's why Ravana, no matter how much wealth he had, he was still wanted more. He was not happy. No matter how many wives he had, he still wanted one more in Sita Devi. So this is the mind of a person under the Rajagun. No matter what they get, they're always chasing something else. You know, endless greed, endless needs also. What about the mind under the influence of ignorance? It is bewildered and it is under illusion. So what is the best thing to do with the mind? How to influence the mind? We have to read books. So just like we have to mind our physical diet, we have to mind our mental diet also. What are we feeding the mind? If we start feeding the mind things that are on the Shuddha Sattva state, then automatically the mind will get influenced. And this is how you end up giving your various anarthas without you even knowing about it, without you even making a conscious effort to get rid of your anger, your frustration, your fear, your anxiety. All this will get reduced naturally when you engage your mind, your body, your intelligence in performing ABCD, association, books, chanting, and deity worship and diet. Now, this is an interesting aspect. Krishna talks about charity and how the three gunas actually influence how we perform charity, how we give. So, people under the mode of goodness perform charity out of a sense of duty. And when they perform charity, they don't have any expectations in return. And they will always do it in the proper time and place. And they will only give charity to a person worthy of receiving it. Charity is supposed to be given to Brahmanas. Charity is supposed to be given to Brahmacharis. Charity is supposed to be given to sannyasis, as per scripture. What about charity under the mode of passion? Well, you are expecting something in return, or you may do it for your own self-enjoyment. You know, there was a picture in one of our chapters, I don't remember which chapter it is. Probably 14. There's a person serving food to the poor. Not that there is anything wrong with serving, doing annadan for the poor. But when you're doing annadan for the poor, it should be prasadam only. It should not be anything else. Which means you should have cooked, offered it to Lord Vishnu, and then distribute it. Because then the person consuming that prasadam is also going to benefit. Whereas if you just cook and serve the poor, they may be physically nourished, but you've deprived them of spiritual nourishment, which is what they really need. Which is what they could also be given along with the physical nourishment. So such kind of charity is actually done in the mode of passion. We have a lot of organizations that do annadan. It's definitely a wonderful act of kindness. But such charity is done in the mode of passion because Krishna is nowhere in the picture. So any charity that we do should be done to please Krishna. What about charity in the mode of ignorance? It's done in an impure place, it's done at an improper time, and worst, it's given to an unworthy person. The problem for us in modern day life is that, so there are so many charitable organizations. We really don't know who we should give to and how the money is going to be spent. How much of what we give is actually going to go to the benefit of that person? How much is, a lot of organizations will publish like what percentage of the charity that they have collected is going to maintain overheads. So out of every, 100 rupees, how many rupees is actually going for administration versus how many rupees is actually going for the purposes for which you actually gave your charity, right? So there are so many charitable organizations, it's hard to figure out who to give. But Krishna has an advice for us. We'll figure out what that advice is. How to figure out who to give. Charities in the three modes. Datavyam iti yadhanam.
दातव्यम् इति यद्दानम्
Diyate nupakarine.
दीयते नुपकारिणे देशे काले च पात्रे च तद्दानं सात्विकं स्मृतम्.
Charity given out of duty, without expectation of return, at the proper time and place, and to a worthy person is considered to be in the mode of goodness. What's the best charity? The best charity is that charity that pleases Krishna the most. So if you offer bhoga to him and distribute it as prasadam, that's a phenomenal way of charity. Hare Krishna, Pratibha Mataji, there was a disturbance from your phone, so I was muting you because of that. So there's some network issue, there is some background noise.
Okay, thank you.
Hare
No
Krishna.
problem.
So the Lord is the bestower of all benediction. If someone gives something to the Lord, he's not the loser. He's the gainer by 1,000,000 times. So charity must be done to please Krishna. And then whatever you've offered to Krishna that you distributed, it's not only you who benefit, but the receiver also benefits. So that is the proper way of doing charity. Both the giver and the receiver must benefit in the context of Krishna, keeping Krishna in the center. So, which means contributing to spreading preaching, because Krishna himself will talk about the importance of preaching when we cover the 18th chapter tomorrow. Giving charity to somebody who's spreading Krishna consciousness, giving charity to organizations that are engaging people in Krishna consciousness, that are bringing people back into God consciousness. These are charities that would satisfy and please Lord Krishna. Why? Because again, coming back, in chapter 5, Krishna said, Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam. There is a variation of that here. Ashraddhaya hutam dattam.
Ashraddhaya hutam tattam.
Tapastaptam kritam chayat.
Tapastaptam.
Tapastaptam chayat.
Asad ityuchyate partha.
Asat
Asat iti partha.
Nachatat pretya no iha.
Nachatat pretyano iha.
This is the last shloka of the chapter. Anything done as sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme, O son of Pritha, is impermanent. It is called asat and is useless both in this life and the next. So that is why the single word summary for today's chapter is, the key is faith. Faith in the scriptures, faith in the Supreme Lord. If you're doing any sacrifice, any charity, any penance without Krishna in the picture, what is Krishna saying? Asat means, Sat means eternal. Asat means temporary. And Krishna is emphatically stating here, it is useless, both in this life and next life. Therefore, faith is important. So any austerity that you perform, any penance that you perform, any charity that you give should be done with Krishna in the center. It's as simple as that. Because otherwise Krishna is saying there's no benefit for you. Not in this life, not in next life. Hence he calls it asat. It is impermanent. Okay. So now we have to discuss Om Tat Sat. What does that Om Tat Sat mean? Because Krishna talks about Om Tat Sat. We'll come to that in the end. So there is a shloka that Srila Prabhupada references in one of the purports. So let's read the shloka because it's important, because Krishna will again talk about coming to the Shuddha Sattva state. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam
Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Sabdhitam
Yadiyate Tatra Pumana Pavritah
Yadiyate Tatra Pumana Pavarta
Sattve cha tasmin Bhagavan Vasudevo
Sattve cha
Sattve
tasmin
Tasman Bhagavan Vasudevo
Hyadokshajo me namasa vidiyate.
Yadokshajo me namasa vidiyayate.
This conversation is happening between Lord Shiva and Sati Devi in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 3, verse 23. What is Lord Shiva telling Sati? I am always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness, in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudeva, is revealed without any covering. So this is Shloka 23. So I've just pulled up the Bhagavatam, Canto 4. This chapter 3 is titled Talks Between Lord Shiva and Sati. The context of this is Daksha, who did not like his son-in-law Lord Shiva, not inviting him for one of the yajnas that he is about to perform. Not only not inviting his son-in-law, not even inviting his daughter. And in that context, a conversation takes place between Sati and Shiva. Sati is so upset that her father is disrespecting her husband by not inviting him. She insists that both of them have to go attend the yajna, even if they were not invited. At that time, Lord Shiva tries to convince Sati, if we were not invited, we should not go. Furthermore, your father envies me. There is no need for us to go. But somehow or the other, Sati convinces him, and what is the result? She ends up giving her own body. So in this regard, there is a little small dialogue that I just want to go over. In this context, Shiva is telling Sati, instead of, going and attending the yajna, why not practice Krishna consciousness? I am doing it all the time and I am perfectly happy and satisfied. I don't care if somebody else doesn't invite me. So you should also focus your attention on Krishna consciousness and not be distracted. Your father is acting in the mode of ignorance. So that shloka was 23. Yeah. So this is a conversation between them. One second. So in Shloka 23, which we just read, where Lord Shiva is saying, I'm always meditating on Vasudeva, and I'm always practicing Krishna consciousness. So in the next shloka, Lord Shiva is telling Sati, therefore, you should not see your father, although he is the giver of your body, because he and his followers are envious of me. Because of his envy, O most worshipful one, he has insulted me with cruel words, although I am innocent. And then he tells Parvati, Sati Devi, if in spite of this instruction, you decide to go, neglecting my words, the future will not be good for you. You are most respectable. And when you are insulted by your relative, this insult will immediately be equal to death. So Lord Shiva is forewarning Sati what will happen if she goes. But since she insists and she goes, we know what happened. Daksha's head was cut off, then replaced with a goat head. Sati Devi could not tolerate the insult of her father, and she enters the fire. So Shiva was warning Sati Devi not to be in the mode of Rajagun or Tamogun and get angry and upset about silly little things. Better to stay in the Shuddha Sattva state by always thinking of Krishna. Going back to chapter 14, the last shloka. Mam chayo vyabhicharena
Mam chayo
Mamchayo
vyabhicharena
vyabhicharena
bhakti yogena sevate
bhakti
yogena
yogena
sevate
sagunan samatityaitan
sagunan
sagunan samatityayitan
brahma bhuyaya kalpate.
brahma
bhuyaya kalpate.
One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So what is Shuddha Sattva? As soon as one is fully Krishna conscious, it is to be understood that one is in his pure, original, constitutional position. This state of existence is called Shuddha Sattva, which means that it is transcendental to the material qualities. So I want to come to the Om Tat Sat shlokas, because for some reason the slides are not there on it. So shloka 23, here's Lord Krishna speaking. From the beginning of creation, the three words Om Tat Sat were used to indicate the supreme absolute truth. These three symbolic representations were used by Brahmanas while chanting the hymns of the Vedas and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. In our culture, you will notice that any good activity or auspicious activity begins with the mantra Om. Even when we begin this class, we say Om Ajnanatimirandasya. If it is a Bhagavatam class, we would say Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So every auspicious activity has to begin with Om. Krishna says in one of the chapters that he is the transcendental sound, Om. What does the word Om mean? Om simply means you're invoking the presence of the Lord. What does Tat mean? Well, Krishna will talk about it. So after this shloka, he goes to his devotees and then he will come to Tat and Sat. He will talk about Om and then he'll talk about Tat and Sat. Therefore, transcendentalists, which is his bhaktas, undertaking performances of sacrifices, charity, and penance in accordance with the scriptural regulations, begin always with Om to attain the Supreme. Without desiring fruitive results, one should perform various kinds of sacrifice, penance, and charity with the word Tat. The purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from material entanglement. So the word Tat symbolizes that you're giving up everything material and you are invoking the spiritual in your life. So in some of the sacrifices that we offer in the fire, there is a phrase that we recite in Sanskrit. When we put articles in the fire, we say na mama, na mama. So you are telling Lord Vishnu, this does not belong to me, this does not belong to me, this does not belong to me. So you're telling during the yajna, you're acknowledging to Vishnu that nothing belongs to you. Everything belongs to the Supreme Lord. These are some Sanskrit words that we use during the yajna. Then in this 26 and 27, Krishna talks about his pure devotees. The absolute truth is the objective of devotional sacrifice, and it is indicated by the word Sat. The performer of such sacrifice is also called Sat, as are all works of sacrifice, penance, and charity, which, true to the absolute nature, are performed to please the Supreme Person, O son of Pritha. What does the word Sat mean then? The word Sat means that all of the sacrifices, the yajnas, the charities that you do it to please Lord Krishna. So this is the broad meaning of the word Om, Tat and Sat. So Om means you are invoking the presence of the Lord before you begin any activity. Tat means you are renouncing everything material by saying nothing belongs to me, everything belongs to you, my dear Lord. And the word Sat means that all of the sacrifices, penances, and charities that we're doing it to please the Supreme Person. That's what Krishna is saying here, right? The performer of such sacrifice is also called Sat, as are all works of sacrifice, penance, and charity, which, true to the absolute nature, are performed to please the Supreme Person. So Krishna is instructing us. When you observe a fast, you're doing it to please him, or you should be doing it to please him. When you are performing charity, you should do it to please Krishna. When you are doing a yajna, yajna includes Harinam yajna. When you're chanting to please Krishna. If you do this, you are on the perfect transcendental platform. And then we read the last shloka. Anything done as a sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme, O son of Pritha, is impermanent. It is called Asat and is useless both in this life and next life. So to summarize chapter 17, we'll talk about some concepts tomorrow. Where is chapter 17? Yes, here it is. So the faith according to the three modes, austerities, which include the type of faith and the type of worship, types of food, types of sacrifices, one's conduct, one's speech, one's ability to control the mind. And then Krishna specifically talks about charity in shlokas 20 to 22. And he comes back to the fact, ultimately, he is the enjoyer. And therefore, because he is the enjoyer, everything should be given to him. Om Tat Sat. Everything should be done to please him. So the penances, yajna, dana, tapah. These three things must be done to please Krishna. Then it will benefit you. Yeah. So that is why today's single word summary is faith. Faith in the form of Om Tat Sat, as per the scriptures. This is the key to unlock the prison door after you have followed all the other instructions from chapters 13, 14, 15, and 16, that anything and everything that you do ultimately should be done with Shraddha. Without Shraddha, nothing is going to be beneficial for you. So tomorrow, we will take up the very last chapter. It's the longest chapter. It is essentially a summary of the Bhagavad Gita again. And of course, the very famous shloka, Sarva Dharmam Parityagya Mam Ekam Sharanam Raja. Krishna says, surrender to me. So one day somebody asked Srila Prabhupada, so why Srila Prabhupada? He asked him in Hindi. I don't know Hindi, but I will just speak that in English. He asked Prabhupada, why Prabhupada? Krishna asks us to be pure and to be sinless. You know, he has very high expectations. And Krishna and Srila Prabhupada promptly shut this man down. He said, no, you've not understood the Gita at all. Krishna never had a purity test for you in the Bhagavad Gita. Quite the opposite. He tells you, Baba, just surrender to me. Whatever I've explained to you may be very difficult for you to follow. But if you surrender to me, I'll take over. So Prabhupada explained to this man, the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is not some purity test. The purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is to lead you to the point to say, whatever Krishna has told us so far is going to be difficult for us to follow. So why not take the simplest, get out of jail free card that Krishna is giving you. He says, Arey Baba, just surrender to me, I'll take over. You don't have anything to worry about. He says, give up all kinds of religions, this dharma, that dharma. Actually, what Krishna means is that because Arjuna has a conflict between the Kula Dharma and the Kshatriya Dharma. So Krishna is essentially saying, whenever there is conflict between dharmas in your life, the ultimate dharma should be to surrender to the Lord. That is the trump card. Nothing else matters. So tomorrow's chapter, I think the number of slides are going to be a little bit more. We'll try and see how we can complete it quickly. There are a few important points that I need to cover in chapter 17. We'll try and do it in 10 minutes tomorrow, and then we will start chapter 18. Yeah? So thank you.